Jimmie Kenneth Johnson, born September 17, 1975, is an American professional stock car racing driver and team owner. He competes part-time in the NASCAR Cup Series, driving the number 84 Toyota Camry XSE for Legacy Motor Club, and part-time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, driving the number 1 Toyota Tundra TRD Pro for Tricon Garage. Johnson has won 7 Cup championships, including 5 consecutive titles, tying him with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt for the most all-time. He is widely considered one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. Johnson was born in El Cajon, California, and began racing motorcycles at the age of 4. After graduating from Granite Hills High School, he competed in off-road series. He raced in Mickey Thompson Entertainment Group, MTEG, Short Course Off-Road Drivers Association, SODA, and SCORE International, winning Rookie of the Year in each series. In 1998, Johnson and his team, Herzog Motorsports, began stock car racing. He moved to the National American Speed Association, ASA, series for late model touring cars and won another Rookie of the Year title. In 2000, he and Herzog moved their operations to the NASCAR Busch Series, now O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Johnson's talent was noticed by Hendrick Motorsports driver Jeff Gordon, who convinced owner Rick Hendrick to sign him in the Winston Cup Series full-time for 2002, with Gordon as a part owner of his car. After finishing 5th in the points in his first full season, he was 2nd in 2003 and 2004, and 5th in 2005. Johnson won his first Cup Series championship in 2006, and with further wins in 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, he became the first and only driver in NASCAR history to win 5 consecutive championships. Johnson finished 6th in the point standings in the 2011 season, and 3rd in 2012, before winning his 6th championship in 2013. In 2016, Johnson won his 7th championship, tying Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt for the most Cup Series championships of all time. Johnson is also a 2-time winner of the Daytona 500, winning in 2006 and 2013. Between 2002 and 2017, Johnson recorded 7 championships, 83 career race wins, 222 top 5s, 341 top 10s, and 35 pole positions. From 2021 to 2022, Johnson competed in the IndyCar Series for Chip Ganassi Racing, and has competed occasionally in sports car racing throughout his career. Racing career. Beginnings. Off-road racing.
Johnson started racing motorcycles in 1980 when he was 4. 3 years later, he won the 60cc class championship, despite injuring his knee. Afterward, he moved to the Mickey Thompson Entertainment Group, MTEG, Stadium Racing Series, where he won several more awards. In 1993, Johnson was given the opportunity to drive for Herb Fischel. He refused the deal and continued racing buggies and trucks in off-road stadium and desert races. He also reported for ESPN in the Short Course Off-Road Drivers Association, SODA. 3 years later, Johnson drove for Herzog Motorsports in the Off-Road Truck Series in 1996. By 1997, Johnson had progressed to SODA's Class 8. Class 8 is Short Course Off-Road Racing's class of two-wheel drive trophy trucks which generate about 800 horsepower. He battled Scott Taylor and Brendan Gaughan for the championship. That year, Johnson won both races at Lake Geneva Raceway's first race weekend in May. He also won the season's 3rd event at Antigo, before finishing 2nd to Gaughan at Antigo's 2nd race. Johnson returned to Lake Geneva in July, winning the Saturday race and finishing 2nd on the following day. Taylor ended up winning the championship, with Gaughan 2nd and Johnson 3rd. In SCORE, Johnson won races and had a few memorable finishes, like that in the 1995 Baja 1000. After leading over 900 miles, he fell asleep behind the wheel and woke up to find himself going off course. His trophy truck, Butch, the paint scheme of which was used for a throwback for Johnson's 48 car in the 2019 Southern 500, and the car that was used by Larry Ragland in wins such as the 1991 Baja 1000, was wrecked. During his time in the SODA, SCORE, and MTEG series, Johnson accumulated over 25 wins, 100 top 3 finishes, 6 championships, and received Rookie of the Year honors in all 3 leagues. ASA and Busch Series. In 1997, Johnson began racing on asphalt ovals when he ran 3 races in the American Speed Association, ASA, making his debut at Hawkeye Down Speedway. Driving for Herzog Motorsports stock car program, he won the ASA Pat Shower Memorial Rookie title in 1998. 1 year later, he had 2 wins and finished 3rd in the standings. Johnson finished 2nd in the 2 races at Fairground Speedway he participated in over those 2 years.
Johnson made his NASCAR Busch Series, now NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, debut at the 1998 Indianapolis Raceway Park event, where he finished 25th for ST Motorsports. He continued his limited slate in 1999 with Herzog Motorsports before moving to a full-time schedule in 2000. At Watkins Glen International, he had a spectacularly hard accident on lap 46 when his brakes failed entering the first turn. He had to swerve quickly to the right to avoid the number 86 of Dennis Demers, but went into the grass on the inside of turn 1, then went back across the track, caught some air on the gravel trap, before finally crashing head-on into the styrofoam barriers at the far end of the turn, while still more than 150 plus mph. He eventually climbed out of the car unscathed and raised his fists in the air like he had won the race. Johnson noted he was so happy to be alive and okay. The next couple of days I was really sore. Otherwise, in a rather uneventful season, which featured 1 DNQ at Daytona and 6 top 10s, he finished 10th in the point standings. In 2001, Johnson recorded 1 win at Chicagoland Speedway and finished 8th in the point standings. His win at Chicagoland was his only win throughout his career at the track. During the year, he joined Hendrick Motorsports for a 4-race schedule in the Winston Cup Series, making his series debut in the UAW GM Quality 500 at Lowe's Motor Speedway. The opportunity was made available when he connected with Hendrick driver Jeff Gordon during the 2000 Busch season. With Herzog facing shutdown due to sponsorship issues, Johnson approached Gordon and was informed of the team's intention to field a 4th car for him. Johnson formally moved to Hendrick in 2002, driving the number 48 Lowe's-sponsored Chevrolet. NASCAR Cup Series, 2002 to 2005. Johnson began racing full-time in the Winston Cup Series during the 2002 season. He earned his first career pole position for the Daytona 500, becoming the 3rd rookie to do so. The first were Loy Allen Jr. in 1994 and Mike Skinner in 1997. In his 13th career start, Johnson scored his first career win in the Napa Auto Quartz 500 at Auto Club Speedway. Johnson became the first rookie driver to lead the point standings and to win twice at the same track during a season by sweeping both races at Dover. In the Coca-Cola 600, Johnson led 263 laps before he got a penalty for overshooting his pit box. He earned 4 pole positions and 3 wins, tying the rookie record set by Tony Stewart in 1999, later surpassed by Shane Van Gisbergen, who won 4 times in 2025, as well as 6 top 5s and 21 top 10 finishes. He finished 5th in the final point standings. However, despite the strong season, Ryan Newman won Rookie of the Year honors over Johnson, partially due to Newman having 22 top 10s compared to Johnson's 21.
In 2003, Johnson finished 9th on the all-time list for consecutive weeks, ranked in the top 10 in points with 69. He won 3 races, Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte and both New Hampshire races, 2 poles at Kansas Speedway and Pocono Raceway, 14 top 5s, and 20 top 10 finishes, including a second-place finish at Rockingham after leading 78 laps. He also was able to win the All-Star race for the first time, as well as finishing 2nd in the final standings, 90 points behind Matt Kenseth and 207 ahead of his future teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. Johnson qualified at Auto Club Speedway in 2005. In 2004, Johnson started slowly at Rockingham Speedway and Las Vegas Motor Speedway, with results of 41st and 16th after a top 10 finish in the Daytona 500. However, he quickly was able to rebound, winning the Carolina Dodge Dealers 400 at Darlington Raceway. Subsequent victories in the Coca-Cola 600, the Pocono 500, and the Pennsylvania 500 came in the middle of the season, seeing Johnson sweep the Pocono races. However, finishes of 37th and 32nd at Talladega Superspeedway and Kansas moved him toward the bottom of the point standings. Afterward, he was able to win the UAW GM Quality 500 at Lowe's Motor Speedway. The second victory of the 2004 chase for the Nextel Cup at the Subway 500 at Martinsville on October 24, 2004 was marred by tragedy. Owner Rick Hendrick's son, Ricky, twin nieces, brother, and chief engine builder Randy Dorton, as well as Joe Turner, Scott Lathram, were killed in an airplane crash en route to the race. All 8 passengers and both pilots died in the incident, and Johnson was told after the completion of the race. Johnson had a total of 8 wins, 20 top 5s, and 23 top 10 finishes. At the end of the season, Johnson finished 2nd in the point standings. In 2005, Johnson won at Las Vegas, Lowe's Motor Speedway, Dover International Speedway, and then again at Lowe's. In total, Johnson had 4 consecutive wins at his sponsors, Lowe's, sponsored track in Charlotte, North Carolina. He won the Coca-Cola 600 that year, which broke the record for the most yellow flags in a Cup Series race, by beating Bobby Labonte by .027 seconds. Johnson had a chance to win the championship coming into the November 20 season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway, but finished 5th in points after crashing at the midway point of the event with a tire problem. He scored 13 top 5s, 22 top 10 finishes, and 1 pole position. 2006 to 2010 championship streak. 2006.
In 2006, Johnson began the season by winning the Daytona 500. The Daytona 500 also marked his first race with Earl Barban as the spotter, who won 5 championships with Johnson and the number 48 team. He finished 2nd in the next race at California Speedway and won the UAW Daimler Chrysler 400 at Las Vegas by passing Matt Kenseth on the last lap. Johnson won his 3rd race of the season in the Aaron's 499 at Talladega, followed by 2 more victories at Indianapolis and Martinsville. One highlight of the season was when he saved the car from slamming into the wall when he spun out during qualifications at the first Dover race. Throughout the season, he became the only modern-era driver to win at least 3 races in each of his first 5 seasons. He started the chase with unfortunate mishaps in the first 4 races, a DNF at New Hampshire, a pitting mistake at Dover, a penalty at Kansas, he led the most laps in the race, and while trying to make a pass for first at Talladega, getting clipped and spinning out. He and the team kept their hopes up and rallied with 5 straight top 2 finishes, including a win at Martinsville, to come back from 8th in the point standings to take the championship. At the end of the season, he recorded 1 pole, 13 top 5s, 24 top 10s, and his first championship title. This was also the first in his NASCAR career. In December, Johnson won the 2006 Driver of the Year award. 2007. During the 2007 season, Johnson continued on a streak and recorded 10 wins, 4 poles, 20 top 5s, and again 24 top 10 finishes. Those 10 wins included sweeping both races at Richmond, Atlanta, and Martinsville. He also won at Las Vegas, Auto Club, Texas, and Phoenix. Afterward, he won his second consecutive championship title and was named the 2007 Driver of the Year. Johnson also had the best average finish in the chase with 5.0. At the end of the season, he had a total of 33 career wins, placing him 18th on the all-time wins list. In December 2007, Johnson commenced a program of exercise sessions and a run schedule supervised by John Sataras in order to balance his strength. Sataras' initial assessment found that half of his body was much tighter, having acclimated to offsetting the G-force load from turning left while driving. In 2 years, Johnson's body fat percentage dropped from 20% to 8%, visible also in the change of the shape of his face, while his strength and stamina greatly improved. Johnson later became the first racing driver to be named Associated Press Male Athlete of the Year in 2009. 2008. Jimmie Johnson racing in the 2008 Daytona 500.
After the 2008 season, Johnson became the second driver to win 3 consecutive NASCAR Cup Series championships, the first being Cale Yarborough. During the season, he won 7 races, including a sweep at Phoenix, a career high of 6 poles, 15 top 5s, and 22 top 10s. In 5 of those 7 wins, he started from the pole. He became the only driver to record 3 wins in each of their first 7 seasons. It was also during this year that Johnson raced in his first ever NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, the O'Reilly 200 at Bristol, where he led 28 laps before spinning out on lap 101. That weekend was the first time he had ever sat in a racing truck. In the chase for the championship, he recorded 14 wins, 8 more than any other driver. One of those included Phoenix, in which he won on low fuel and high tire wear after crew chief Chad Naus decided to stay out late in a race. He was also named the 2008 Driver of the Year and won an ESPY as the best driver. After the season, he also moved to 3rd on the active winners list. 2009. In the 2009 season, Johnson recorded his 4th consecutive championship, becoming the only driver to win 4 back-to-back season titles. Throughout this season, he won 7 races, including a 3rd consecutive Checker Auto Parts 500 and both Dover races, 4 poles, 16 top 5s, and 24 top 10 finishes. Johnson now became the only driver to win at least 3 races in each of his first 8 seasons, as well as the only driver to qualify for the chase for the championship every year since 2004. During the season, he moved up 1 spot to 2nd on the active winners list and went to 13th on the all-time wins list. After the season concluded, he won an ESPY for the 2nd consecutive year and won the Driver of the Year award for the 3rd time, tying Jeff Gordon, Mario Andretti, and Darrell Waltrip as the only 3-time drivers to win the award. 2010. Johnson's 2010 Toyota Save Mart 350 race-winning car.
During 2010, Johnson won his 5th consecutive championship, becoming the 3rd driver to make up points to win the title since 1975. During the season, he scored 2 poles, 17 top 5s, 23 top 10s, and 6 wins. He also remained the only driver to qualify for the chase every year since its inception in 2004. He became the 12th driver to win 50-plus NASCAR races when he won at Bristol in March and went up to 10th on the all-time wins list. His wins in 2010 included Auto Club, Las Vegas, where he passed Jeff Gordon with 16 laps to go for the lead, Bristol, Sonoma, his first and only road course win, New Hampshire, and Dover. At New Hampshire, with 8 laps remaining, Kurt Busch, who was running second, bumped Johnson to become the leader, but Johnson returned the favor a couple of laps later to lead the final 2 laps. Johnson said, "Kurt knocked me out of the way. At that point, I thought, I don't care if I win or finish. I'm going to run into him one way or the other. I tried once and moved him. I thought, I've got to hit him harder. The second time I did and moved him out of the way." Johnson was also named Driver of the Year for the 4th time in his career, joining Gordon as the only drivers to win the award that many times. Johnson had been fighting for the championship with Denny Hamlin all season, but eventually passed him in points in the season finale at Homestead. Johnson also won Tony Stewart's charity race, the Prelude to the Dream, his first victory on a dirt oval. 2011, Johnson, number 5, and Jeff Gordon during the 2011 All-Star race. In 2011, Johnson began the season with a 4th-place finish in the Budweiser Shootout after starting from the 23rd position. 1 week later in the 2011 Daytona 500, he started 23rd but finished 27th after being involved in a crash on lap 29. During the Subway Fresh Fit 500, he managed a 3rd-place finish. Following a 16th place finish after the Cobalt Tools 400, he collected 2 consecutive top 5 finishes.
Statistically, Johnson's 2011 season was one of his worst performances to date, even though he finished 6th in the points. He only won 2 races during the season. The first was the Aaron's 499 at Talladega Superspeedway, where Johnson started on the outside pole and tandem drafted with Dale Earnhardt Jr. for the entire race. On the last lap, with Johnson in front, he and Earnhardt Jr. were in 5th and 6th off of turn 4, behind 2 other pairs of cars, their Hendrick teammates Jeff Gordon and Mark Martin, and the Richard Childress drafting pair of Clint Bowyer and Kevin Harvick. In the tri-oval, Earnhardt Jr. gave Johnson enough of a push to nip Bowyer at the finish line by .002 seconds. This was the closest recorded finish in Talladega history and tied the 2003 Carolina Dodge Dealers 400 for closest margin of victory in NASCAR history. After finishing in the first 15 positions in the next 4 races, Johnson failed to finish the Coca-Cola 600 after his engine failed. 3 weeks later, in the Hell of a Good Sour Cream Dips 400, Johnson spun off turn 2, flattening multiple tires and breaking the sway bar, which prompted him to a finish of 27th. During the Toyota Save Mart 350, Johnson finished 7th after starting 12th on the grid. The finish moved Johnson to 3rd in the driver's standings. After returning to Daytona International Speedway for the Coke Zero 400, Johnson and Earnhardt Jr. ran together for most of the race, like at Talladega, until Johnson pitted under a caution flag. Johnson fell down the grid and was involved in a last lap accident, prompting him to finish 20th. During the next 2 races, Johnson finished 3rd and 5th in the Quaker State 400 and the Lennox Industrial Tools 301. 2 weeks later, Johnson found himself finishing 19th during the Brickyard 400 after coming to pit road with 30 laps remaining in the event. Johnson finished 4th in the Good Sam RV Insurance 500 after bumping Kurt Busch on the final lap. In the next race, Johnson finished 10th. Johnson finished in the top 5 in the following 3 races. During the last race of the regular season, the Wonderful Pistachios 400, Johnson finished in his 31st position. While at Chicagoland Speedway for the Geico 400, Johnson finished 10th. Afterward, Johnson finished 18th in the Sylvania 300, then 2nd in the AAA 400. 1 week later, Johnson recorded his 2nd victory of the season in the Hollywood Casino 400. During the Bank of America 500, Johnson was involved in a crash and finished 34th. In the following race, Johnson finished 2nd. For the next 2 races, Johnson finished 14th in each and finished 32nd in the Ford 400 to finish 6th in the Driver Standings Championship. The 3rd NASCAR championship for Tony Stewart marked the first time since 2005, coincidentally Stewart's 2nd, that someone other than Johnson was the champion. 2012. Johnson began the 2012 season with a 14th place finish in the Budweiser shootout after crashing on lap 74. During the Daytona 500, Johnson was involved in a crash on lap 2 when he turned into the wall after contact from Elliott Sadler, then was T-boned by David Reagan, also collecting Danica Patrick, Kurt Busch, and Trevor Bayne. Damage to the car was severe, prompting him to retire and finish 42nd. Afterward, he finished 4th and 2nd in the Subway Fresh Fit 500 and Cobalt Tools 400. While at Bristol Motor Speedway for the Food City 500, Johnson finished in the 9th position, moving him up to 11th in the driver's standings. Next, Johnson finished 10th in the Auto Club 400 despite having an oil leak, but the rain saved Johnson from a low finish. He went on to finish 12th in the spring event at Martinsville after being involved in a crash on the first green-white checker attempt. In the following event, the Samsung Mobile 500, Johnson finished 2nd after leading much of the race before he was passed by Greg Biffle. Afterward, he recorded a 3rd-place finish in the STP 400 at Kansas on April 22, 2012, and a 6th-place finish in the Capital City 400 at Richmond 1 week later. On May 6, 2012, Johnson started 19th in the Aaron's 499 at Talladega, but finished 35th after suffering a broken oil pump belt on lap 62. Johnson pits his car in 2012. Johnson won his first race of the season 1 week later in the Bojangles Southern 500 at Darlington. The win was also Rick Hendrick's 200th NASCAR Cup Series win. A week later, he matched Gordon and Dale Earnhardt with 3 wins in the NASCAR Sprint All-Star race after winning the 2012 NASCAR Sprint All-Star race. Next, in the Coca-Cola 600, Johnson finished 11th in the race after a penalty on lap 354. After the Coca-Cola 600, Johnson went on to win his 2nd race of the season in a FedEx 400. In the Pocono 400, he recorded a 4th-place finish after starting 24th on the grid. During the next 2 races, Johnson placed 5th, moving him to 4th in the standings. Afterward, Johnson finished 6th after winning his first pole position of the season in the Quaker State 400. However, in the Coke Zero 400, Johnson finished 36th after retiring from a crash on lap 124. After finishing 7th during the Lennox Industrial Tools 301, Johnson recorded his 3rd victory of the season and his 4th career win at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, tying Jeff Gordon for what was the record for the most wins in the Brickyard 400. At Michigan, Johnson was leading late in the race with 6 laps to go when his engine blew up, giving the race to Greg Biffle. After making the NASCAR chase for the championship, Johnson secured 3 straight top 5 finishes in the Geico 400, Sylvania 300, and AAA 400. Following a 17th place finish in Good Sam Roadside Assistance 500, Johnson recorded 4 top 10 finishes, including 2 consecutive wins from the pole position at Martinsville and Texas, which was his 60th win in the series, to take a 7-point lead over Brad Keselowski. Johnson was able to hold off Keselowski's hard racing, which even prompted Tony Stewart to say that he was driving with a death wish. At Phoenix, Johnson blew a right front tire, which caused him to collide into the wall and finish in the 32nd position. He was racing for the win and the championship the following week at Homestead, but his chances of winning the championship were over after he had a pit road penalty and had a gear failure, and he finished 36th in that race and finished third in the Drivers' Championship behind Keselowski and Bauer. 2013 returned to championship form. Johnson racing during the 2013 STP Gas Booster 500. In 2013, Johnson began his season with a 14th place finish in the 2013 Sprint Unlimited when he crashed on lap 14 along with Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Mark Martin, Jeff Gordon, and Denny Hamlin. Afterward, he placed 4th in the first Budweiser Duel, resulting in a 9th place starting position in the 2013 Daytona 500. In the Daytona 500, Johnson started well, assuming the lead from Jeff Gordon on lap 32 and leading a handful of laps before falling back to the middle of the pack. Over the last few laps, Johnson was racing alongside Brad Keselowski from the lead until a caution came out for debris. Johnson took advantage of leading on the last restart. With 5 laps to go, Johnson led a lane with Greg Biffle and Danica Patrick. He then held off a last lap charge from Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Mark Martin to win his second Daytona 500. This was Johnson's first Daytona 500 win with Knaus, as he won the 2006 race with Darian Grubb as Knaus was serving a 5-race suspension. It was also the first time since his 2006 win that he finished better than 27th in the Daytona 500, after a streak of 6 years where he had never finished better than 27th because of crashes and mechanical failures.
The following week at Phoenix, Johnson started inside the top 10 and finished second behind Carl Edwards. He followed this with a 6th place finish at Las Vegas. At Bristol, he was running on the lead lap until a late race spin forced him back to a 22nd place finish. At Fontana, he struggled for most of the race, racing near the back of the pack, but salvaged a 12th place finish. Johnson won his first pole position of the season at Martinsville and had the dominant car, leading 346 of 500 laps on the way to his 8th Martinsville race win. Johnson also assumed the point lead, which he held for the remainder of the regular season. Johnson's consistency was enough that there were points in the summer where he was more than a full 2 race wins worth of points ahead of Carl Edwards or Clint Bowyer. Afterward, Johnson finished 6th at Texas. At Kansas, he led 9 laps and finished 3rd behind Matt Kenseth and Casey Kane. Johnson finished 12th the following week at Richmond, allowing him to build even further on his point lead. At Talladega, he was the only driver besides Matt Kenseth to lead double-digit laps, 16, and finished in 5th place. A 4th place finish the following week at Darlington allowed Johnson to further solidify his point lead over Edwards. Johnson during practice for the 2013 NRA 500. In the 2013 NASCAR Sprint All-Star race, Johnson won his record 4th All-Star race after a fast pit stop allowed him to start the final 10-lap sprint in 2nd and later passed Casey Kane for the victory. 1 week later, Johnson finished 22nd after spinning sideways late in the race. At Dover, Johnson led 143 laps but finished 17th when he jumped Juan Pablo Montoya on the last restart, causing NASCAR to issue him a penalty. He was able to redeem himself for this mistake the following week at Pocono by earning the pole position, leading the most laps, and winning his 3rd race of the season, which increased his point lead to 51 points over Edwards. This also snapped a 9-year winless streak for Johnson at Pocono since sweeping both of the track's 2004 NASCAR Cup Series races. At the Quicken Loans 400 at Michigan, Johnson closed in on Greg Biffle for the lead with less than 10 laps left, but suffered a flat tire with less than 5 laps to go. Johnson finished the race in 28th, his worst finish of the season to that point. Johnson then finished 9th at Sonoma. At Kentucky, Johnson started 3rd. He had the dominant car of the race, leading 182 of 267 laps. However, on a restart on lap 246, Johnson was slow to get up to speed and was subsequently touched and spun by Joey Logano, costing Johnson a shot at the win and giving the race to Matt Kenseth. Johnson was able to charge through the field after the caution and restart to salvage a 9th place finish.
Returning to Daytona for the Coke Zero 400, Johnson led 94 laps and held off Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick on a green-white checker finish to win his 4th race of the year. In winning the race, Johnson became the first driver since Bobby Allison in 1982 to sweep both Daytona races in a season. This was a significant improvement in Johnson's runs on the restrictor plate tracks, as he had been crashed out of the running at both Daytona races in 2012, had an engine failure early while leading at Talladega in the spring, and was part of a crash on the last lap in the fall. Also, he was one of only 3 drivers to sweep the top 10, the other 2 drivers being Ryan Newman and Dale Earnhardt Jr. At New Hampshire for the Camping World RV Sales 301, Johnson qualified 2nd, but failed post-qualifying inspection after his car was found to be too low, and started the race in 43rd, the first time in his career he started dead last. In the race, Johnson passed 7 cars in the first 4 laps and reached the top 20 by lap 50, while reaching the top 10 by lap 165. Johnson finished 6th. He almost won the pole position at Indianapolis, but was bumped to 2nd by Ryan Newman. Johnson led the most laps and almost won, but a slow final pit stop cost him the race to Newman. The following week at Pocono, Johnson won another pole position, setting another track qualifying record. He led 43 of the first 80 laps before he cut a right front tire that knocked a spark plug loose and affected the handling of the car. Johnson's pit crew worked hard to repair the car, fixing the plug on the last pit stop and managing to salvage a 13th place finish after racing near the back of the pack for most of the race. Returning to Michigan, Johnson qualified 3rd, but crashed in happy hour, forcing him to a backup car and a 43rd starting spot. After running up to the lead through pit stop strategy, Johnson lost an engine on lap 55, relegating him to a 40th place finish. This was followed by a streak of 3 poor finishes, of 36th at Bristol, 28th at Atlanta, and 40th at Richmond, due to crashes and mechanical failures. Johnson started the chase seated in 2nd place. He started the chase with a 5th place finish at Chicago, followed by a 4th place finish at New Hampshire. At Dover, Johnson led 243 laps and held off Dale Earnhardt Jr. over the last 25 laps to win his 8th race at the track, also redeeming himself for the restart line violation that had cost him a shot at winning the June race.
Johnson spent the next several races chasing Matt Kenseth for the points lead, eventually gaining it at Talladega, though losing it when he and Kenseth tied for the points lead at Martinsville. Returning to Texas, Johnson had the dominant car, leading 255 laps to his 6th win of the season. The following weekend at Phoenix, Johnson avoided trouble in tight racing on 2 separate occasions, a near scrape in Turn 4 on the first lap, and later a near spin after contact with Carl Edwards in Turn 1 to escape with a 3rd place finish. He also capitalized on Kenseth suffering from a poorly handling car. With Kenseth finishing 23rd, Johnson took a 28-point lead to the season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway. In the finale, Johnson raced conservatively to a 9th place finish to secure his 6th title. He closed out the season with 6 wins, 3 poles, 16 top 5s, and 24 top 10s, with an average finish of 9.8 and an average start of 10.7. 2014. Johnson racing during the 2014 Toyota Save Mart 350. Statistically, 2014 was one of Johnson's worst seasons to date. He started the season on an up-and-down note, but went winless through the first 11 races of the 2014 season. His best finish was 2nd at Martinsville. Skepticism began to arise, as he had never gone more than 12 races into a season without a win, and hadn't gone that long since the first few years of his Cup career. However, Johnson won the Coca-Cola 600, his first win in the race since 2005. Afterward, he went on to win at Dover the following week, making it the 13th time he had back-to-back wins. A few weeks later, Johnson recorded his first win at Michigan, after several years of being deprived of a shot at victory as a result of running out of gas or blowing an engine. However, he didn't keep up with the momentum. After finishing in the top 10 at Sonoma in Kentucky, Johnson was collected in an early wreck in the Coke 0400, finishing 42nd. Johnson's streak of misfortune continued the next several weeks, finishing 42nd for the 2nd week in a row at New Hampshire. This was followed up by an inconsistent run at Indy, 14th, and poor showings resulting from accidents at Pocono, 39th, and Watkins Glen, 28th. Despite the poor finishes, Johnson qualified 4th for the chase. In the chase, Johnson finished 12th at Chicagoland, 5th at New Hampshire, and 3rd at Dover to advance to the contender round. However, trouble struck when he finished 40th and 17th in the next 2 races.
At Talladega, Johnson started 2nd and led a high of 84 laps. However, a 24th place finish kept him from advancing to the eliminator round. At Martinsville, Johnson started 7th but finished 39th after being involved in a crash early in the race. Returning to Texas, Johnson dominated and held off Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, and Jeff Gordon, who cut a tire on contact with Brad Keselowski late in the race, which led to a post-race brawl, to score his 3rd straight win in the fall Texas race, and also pended an 18-race winless streak. At Phoenix, he struggled for most of the day and finished 38th after blowing a tire and crashing out. At the season finale at Homestead, Johnson finished 9th and closed out finishing 11th in points. This marked the first time in Johnson's NASCAR Cup career that he had finished outside of the top 10 in the final points. 2015. Johnson leading the 2015 Daytona 500. Johnson began his season with a win in the Budweiser Duel. He started the season by finishing 5th in the Daytona 500 for the 2nd year in a row. The following week, he won the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 at Atlanta. At Las Vegas, Johnson crashed twice into the outside wall, leaving him with a 41st place finish. He rebounded with an 11th place finish in Phoenix and a 9th place finish at California, his first top 10 there in 2 years. At Martinsville, he struggled to a 35th place finish. However, his momentum returned to Texas when he held off Kevin Harvick and Dale Earnhardt Jr. to win. At Bristol, he avoided tight trouble early in the race and came home 2nd to pole sitter Matt Kenseth. At Richmond, he finished 3rd. These finishes moved him back up to 4th in the standings. At Talladega, Johnson started 5th and led 50 laps, only to finish 2nd to Earnhardt Jr.
At Kansas, Johnson gambled by staying out on the last round of pit stops and held off Harvick and Earnhardt again to win, his third race at Kansas and of the season. In winning, he established a Cup record of 23 wins on 1.5-mile tracks, taking what was both his 200th top 5 and his 300th top 10 finish. At Charlotte, he spun out on 2 occasions. The first time was early in the race while running 16th coming out of turn 4, but he was lucky to avoid hitting anything. He wasn't so lucky on the second spin late in the race. While running 5th, he spun out again at the same place and hit the wall in pit road, causing some nose damage. Those spinouts left him with a 40th place finish. He rebounded the following week with a win at Dover and also became one of 4 drivers to have won 10 or more races at one track. This gave him a total of 74 career wins, 2 fewer than Dale Earnhardt's 76.
At Pocono, Johnson cut a tire on lap 88 but did not take major damage. He was able to work his way through the field to finish in 3rd place. He finished 19th at Michigan after the race was called for rain on lap 138. At Sonoma, Johnson led the most laps at 45 laps, but a late race caution caused by Casey Mears' broken wheel axle cost him, and he was passed by Kyle Busch with 5 laps to go and slipped back to 6th place. Johnson during 2015 Toyota SafeMart 350 qualifying. Returning to Daytona, Johnson started 12th and led 35 laps before finishing 2nd to Dale Earnhardt Jr. in a repeat of the Talladega race. At Kentucky, Johnson started 6th and ran inside the top 10 for most of the night, finishing 9th. At the second stop in Pocono, Johnson, along with 2 of his Hendrick teammates, Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr., took advantage of several cars running out of fuel to finish in the top 6. Gordon finished 3rd, Dale Jr. took 4th, and Johnson grabbed 6th. At Watkins Glen, despite suffering 2 penalties, lap 3 overshooting the entrance to the inner loop, and caution number 1, lap 26 to 28, speeding through pit road, Johnson rallied to finish 10th. He wasn't so lucky at Michigan, as late in the race he got loose and spun in turn 3 and damaged the splitter on his car, resulting in a 39th place finish, 10 laps down. He rebounded at Bristol by finishing 4th, but had bad luck once more at Darlington. He spun out on lap 134 in turn 4, bringing out the 7th caution, and was never a real threat. He ended up 19th. He was able to recover a bit for a 9th place finish at Richmond and started first in the chase in a 3-way tie between him, Kyle Busch, and Matt Kenseth. Johnson opened up the chase in a rough way. At Chicagoland, he blew a left front tire early in the race, but was able to charge through the field to salvage an 11th place finish. He was also the subject of controversy when he made contact with Kevin Harvick on a 3-wide pass that led to Harvick cutting a left rear tire, leaving Harvick with a 42nd place finish. At Loudon, Johnson finished 6th after blowing a tire in the 3rd position. At Dover, his chase hopes came to an end when his car broke a driveline, leaving him to finish 36 laps down in 41st place. At the fall race at Texas, Johnson won, passing Brad Keselowski with 4 laps to go. This marked his 4th consecutive win in the fall race and 3rd consecutive win on that track, having also won the spring race. That victory also marked the 75th of his NASCAR Cup Series career, putting him 1 race win short of tying Dale Earnhardt's career wins. Also in the process, he snapped a 20-race winless streak. Johnson finished 5th at Phoenix, and for the 3rd year in a row, he finished 9th at Homestead. Also in the process, he edged out Ryan Newman by 1 point to finish 10th in the final standings. With the retirement of his teammate and mentor, Jeff Gordon, Johnson assumed the active wins record with 75. 2016, the 7th title. Johnson after winning the 2016 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship. Johnson began the 2016 season with a 16th place finish at the Daytona 500. In the next race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, he won his first race of the season and the 76th of his career, tying Dale Earnhardt for 7th on the all-time wins list. Johnson finished 3rd and 11th in the next 2 events of the season at Las Vegas and Phoenix. His second victory of the season came in the 5th race, the Auto Club 400, where Johnson passed Harvick in an overtime finish. It was also the first time since 2011 that he finished in the top 5 at the Auto Club Speedway. In the STP 500 at Martinsville Speedway, Johnson recorded a 9th place finish after moving through the field after qualifying 24th. 1 week later, Johnson finished 4th in the Duck Commander 500 at Texas Motor Speedway, despite suffering minor damage during a 13-car accident that occurred within 50 laps of the finish. In the Food City 500 at Bristol, Johnson finished 23rd after making an unscheduled pit stop due to a loose lug nut on lap 300. At Richmond, he led 44 laps early in the race and finished 3rd. At Talladega, Johnson was spun by Paul Menard and got involved in a multi-car accident with 28 laps to go, finishing 22nd. Johnson's streak of misfortune continued through the next several months, crashing out at Dover, Pocono, Daytona, Kentucky, and at Watkins Glen, where he finished last for the first time in his career. His top 10 finishes during the period came only in the Coca-Cola 600 and Brickyard 400, where he finished 3rd in both races. Johnson finished 7th and 6th at Bristol and Michigan the following 2 weeks, but finished 33rd at Darlington after he spun out of turn 4. Johnson then finished 11th at Richmond. He qualified 8th for the chase.
Johnson began the chase for the championship by leading a race-high 118 laps at Chicagoland, but received a speeding penalty during a green flag pit stop late in the race and ultimately finished 12th. Johnson finished 8th the following week at Loudon. At Dover, Johnson led 90 laps but once again received a pit road penalty with 105 laps to go, costing him a win. He charged through the field and finished 7th, first car a lap down, and moved to the round of 12 of the chase.
At Charlotte, Johnson led a race-high 155 laps and won the Bank of America 500, claiming his 8th win at the track and the 3rd win of the season, also snapping his 24-race winless streak. This marked Johnson's first appearance in the round of 8 under the current chase system. He then finished 4th at Kansas and 23rd at Talladega. At Martinsville, Denny Hamlin aggressively made contact with Johnson on lap 198 and had a tire rub to cause a caution, but was able to stay on the lead lap. Later, during a caution on lap 362, he lost fuel pressure, but was able to get the car refired and stayed on the lead lap again. After the restart, he took the lead from Hamlin and led the final 92 laps to win the Goodies Fast Relief 500. This locked him into the Championship 4 for the final race at Homestead. Johnson finished 11th in the rain-shortened race at Texas and 38th at Phoenix after being penalized a lap for passing the pace car coming down to pit road and being involved in a wreck on a restart. Johnson claimed his 7th championship by winning at Homestead on November 20. After losing his starting spot due to a pre-race inspection fault, Johnson started at the rear of the field. He progressed through the field, cracking the top 10 quickly, but remained stagnant around 5th place for a majority of the race. On a restart with 10 laps to go, Carl Edwards came across the nose of Joey Logano, hit the inside wall, and triggered a massive wreck, ending Edwards' championship hopes. Johnson avoided the accident and was put in a position to win the title. On the final restart, he passed Kyle Larson, winning the race and his 7th championship, tying Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt for the most all-time championships. 2017, final NASCAR wins. Johnson before winning his final race, the 2017 AAA 400 Drive for Autism. Johnson came into 2017 as the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion. The start of the season didn't go as smoothly as the end of last season, however. Through the first 6 races of the season, Johnson only scored 1 top 10 finish. He then rebounded with back-to-back wins at the 2017 O'Reilly Auto Parts 500 in Texas, started from the rear of the field, and the 2017 Food City 500 at Bristol, his first win at the last great Coliseum since 2010. This would be the 14th and final time he won back-to-back races in his career. The following week, Johnson would finish just outside the top 10 at Richmond after colliding with teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. late in the event, leading to an eventual flat tire and spin for the driver of the number 88. Johnson scored his 3rd win of the season at Dover in June after passing Kyle Larson on an overtime restart, which ended under caution with a multi-car incident behind the 2 leaders. This was Johnson's record-holding 11th win at Dover and 83rd career victory, tying him with NASCAR Hall of Famer Cale Yarborough. This would eventually be Johnson's final NASCAR Cup Series win. The rest of the season didn't go smoothly for Johnson. In the week following his Dover triumph, during the Exalta Presents the Pocono 400, Johnson's brakes failed into Turn 1 at a speed of over 200 mph, resulting in a tremendous impact with the outside safer barrier. Similarly, directly behind Johnson, fellow competitor Jamie McMurray also experienced a brake failure and impacted the wall hard, igniting a large vehicle fire. Both Johnson and McMurray were uninjured in the accident. Johnson suffered a big slump during the summer part of the season, failing to earn a top 5 finish and only netting 3 top 10 finishes. During that stretch, in the 2017 Brickyard 400, on a late race restart, Johnson's Lowe's-sponsored Chevrolet started billowing smoke while running in 3rd place. Heading into Turn 3, the 2 race leaders, Brad Keselowski and Kasey Kahne, battled one another, allowing Johnson to close in and make a 3-wide move to the inside. Without much space into the corner, and with the obvious mechanical failure, the car broke sideways and impacted the outside retaining wall hard. The following week, Johnson had another run-in with teammate Kasey Kahne, resulting in a 2nd consecutive DNF, his 3rd in the last 4 races. Regardless, Johnson, from his wins earlier in the season, was able to qualify for the playoffs. Entering the 2017 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, the defending champion was still one of the favorites to win the title, despite his results over the summer stretch. After earning his first top 5 finish, 3rd, since his Dover victory, fittingly in the fall Dover event, he advanced through the opening round and into the round of 12. Johnson scored a 7th place finish at Charlotte to open the 2nd round, but the following week was involved in the big one at Talladega. He was scored with a 24th place result after his car was disqualified for violating the NASCAR damaged vehicle policy, in which his crew worked on the car during the red flag. In the elimination race at Kansas Speedway, Johnson entered with a 7-point advantage. After having 2 separate spins, he drove his way through a large multi-car accident octane of 2, involving playoff drivers Matt Kenseth and Jamie McMurray, and rebounded with an 11th place finish. Assisted by fellow playoff contenders finding trouble, Johnson qualified into the round of 8 by just 9 points.
Unfortunately, Johnson's performance slipped in the 3rd round. He finished 12th at Martinsville, but was followed by a disappointing 27th place result at Texas. Entering the final race in the round at Phoenix, Johnson was 51 points behind the playoff cutoff, and in a near must-win situation. However, on lap 148, Johnson's hopes at an 8th championship ended when he blew a tire in turn 3 and hit the outside wall hard, ending his day and eliminating him from the playoffs. Johnson finished 10th in the final standings, his 15th and final top 10 finish in the point standings. 2018, final season with Knaus and Lowe's. Johnson's 2018 car at Richmond Raceway. Johnson's speed weeks did not go smoothly, wrecking in each of his 3 races. At the Advance Auto Parts Clash, he was wrecked on the last lap by Kyle Larson. This was the 7th year in a row he failed to finish the Clash. Johnson qualified 3rd for the 2018 Daytona 500, but had to go to a backup car after wrecking in his duel. On lap 59 of the Daytona 500, he got caught up in a wreck started by Ryan Blaney and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., which also involved his teammate William Byron, Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, Trevor Bayne, and Ty Dillon, and ended up 38th. Since then, Johnson struggled throughout the 2018 season, with only 2 top 5s and 8 top 10 finishes by the time he barely made the playoffs for the 15th season in a row. Johnson's only great run of the season came at the Charlotte Roval race, where he ran in the top 10 for most of the day and battled Martin Truex Jr. for the win on the final lap, but he locked his brakes on turn 17 and spun out of control, taking Truex out with him in the process, while Blaney passed them to win the race. Johnson finished 8th, and as a result of a 3-way tie with 0 points, he was eliminated in the round of 16. Johnson scored only one more top 10 finish afterward and wound up a then career-worst 14th in the final point standings since running full-time in 2002, winless for the first time in his career, along with equaling a career-low 11 top 10 finishes for the 2nd season in a row. Johnson notably gave teammate and friend Chase Elliott a push to the front stretch when his car ran out of fuel when being congratulated by the rest of the drivers after recording his first career win at Watkins Glen. On March 14, 2018, Lowe's announced it would no longer sponsor the number 48 car after the 2018 season. Ally Financial assumed primary sponsorship of the team in 2019 on a 2-year deal. Johnson and his longtime crew chief Knaus parted ways at the end of the season, ending a 17-year partnership, the longest in NASCAR history. Johnson was paired with JR Motorsports crew chief Kevin Meendring in the 2019 season. 2019, racing during the 2019 Toyota SafeMart 350.
The 2019 season started on a positive note for Johnson, as he won the 2019 Advance Auto Parts Clash after contact between him and Paul Menard sent Menard spinning while battling for the lead and triggering the big one on lap 55 right before the rain arrived. It was also the first race with new sponsor Ally Financial and crew chief Meendring. He followed it up by finishing 8th in the first dual race. In the Daytona 500, Johnson ran up front most of the race, but when he came to pit road with around 40 to go, B.J. McLeod and Cody Ware's car spun behind him and hit him in the left rear. The contact ripped off the left rear quarter panel. He recovered to finish 9th after being 2 laps down. In the next race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Jimmie finished 24th, 2 laps down. He followed up by finishing 19th. He followed up that performance with a 9th place finish. On March 29th in O'Reilly Auto Parts 500 qualifying at Texas, Johnson got his first pole since 2016 at Texas and scored his first top 5 finish since the 2018 Coca-Cola 600 2 days later. At the Coca-Cola 600, Johnson ran well and ended up finishing 8th. At Chicagoland Speedway, Johnson started 4th and took the lead on lap 7 from Austin Dillon. He went on to finish 4th, followed by a 3rd place finish at the rain-shortened Coke Zero Sugar 400 a week later, his best finishes of the season. On July 29, 2019, following a string of disappointing finishes during the season, Hendrick Motorsports announced that race engineer Cliff Daniels would replace Meendring as the crew chief of the number 48. At Watkins Glen, Johnson finished 19th after being spun out by Ryan Blaney, leading to an argument between the two after the race. The animosity between them lasted until Michigan a week later. In September 2019, Johnson missed the playoffs cut for the first time in his NASCAR career after finishing 35th in the Brickyard 400 due to contact with Kurt Busch and William Byron that sent his car crashing hard into the wall. Johnson scored 4 more top 10 finishes in the playoffs and wound up finishing a career-worst 18th place in the final standings, going winless for the straight season. Many crashes throughout the season brought down his otherwise promising year. On October 4, 2019, Ally extended its sponsorship of the number 48 for 3 more years through the 2023 season. 2020, final full-time season. Johnson's 2020 car at Daytona International Speedway.
On November 20, 2019, Johnson announced that the 2020 Cup season would be his last full-time season of racing, although he did not rule out a part-time schedule after that. The 2020 season started with the Daytona 500 qualifying. He finished 4th for a 2nd year in a row. Later that day, he entered the 2020 Busch Clash as the defending champion. He started 16th and finished 11th after a tire spun on the first restart in overtime. Next race was the 2020 Blue-Green Vacations Duels. He started and finished 2nd behind teammate William Byron in Duel 2. In his last Daytona 500, he started 6th and finished 35th after Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski triggered the big one. Next week in Las Vegas, he finished 1st in the final practice. He started 18th and finished 5th in the race. At his home track, Auto Club, he qualified 2nd, losing the pole position to Clint Bowyer by .007 seconds. In the race, his wife and children waved the green flag at the start of the race. There was a 4-wide salute before the race to honor him. For most of the event, he was in the top 10 and led 10 laps. He finished 7th. In the Real Heroes 400 at Darlington, the first race back after the delay forced by the COVID-19 pandemic, Johnson was leading in the final lap of the first stage when he lost control of his car and crashed after contact with Chris Buescher, who was a lap down at the time. It marked his 100th race in a row without a win. A few days later in the Toyota 500 at the same track, Johnson bounced back with an 8th-place finish in the same track. At the Coca-Cola 600, he qualified 2nd, losing the pole position to Kurt Busch by .009 seconds. Johnson finished 2nd in the 600, but was disqualified after his car failed post-race technical inspection. He bounced back with an 11th-place run in Charlotte's next race, Alsco Uniforms 500. Johnson enjoyed a pair of top 10 finishes at Bristol and Atlanta. At Martinsville, he overcame a start at 21st, finished 3rd in the first stage, and scored his first stage win of the year and the 3rd of his career in the second segment, but dropped back in the 3rd stage and finished 10th. He fell back early due to car issues at Homestead, but ended with a strong run to make his way to the top 20 and finish 16th. The following week at Talladega, Johnson spearheaded a pre-race ceremony in support of Bubba Wallace after it was falsely reported a noose was in his garage. Before the race, Johnson texted his peers that he intended to stand with Wallace during the national anthem, with the drivers also pushing his car to the front of pit road. In the race, Johnson was on the verge of taking the lead with 3 laps remaining before being spun by Harvick.
On July 3, 2020, 2 days before the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis, Johnson announced he had tested positive for the coronavirus, forcing him to miss the race and Justin Allgaier to take over the number 48. This snapped a 663-race streak in which Johnson started a Cup event. Johnson was cleared to return to racing on July 8, 2020, after testing negative twice, and he received a waiver that allowed him to remain playoff eligible should he qualify. His first race back was the Quaker State 400 at Kentucky, a track at which he had never won before. With 23 laps to go, he was coming off of the fastest 3 laps of the race and a strong run from 9th to 3rd before taking the inside on a restart and being nipped by Brad Keselowski in the left rear, spinning out. He finished the race in 18th. The next week at Texas, Johnson was again one of the fastest cars, putting up a top 10 lap before getting loose and hitting the wall in Stage 2. On top of that, his crew committed a penalty for too many crew members over the wall. He finished 26th and only 2 points above the playoff cutoff in the standings. Johnson's misfortunes continued at Kansas when he was collected in a 3rd stage crash while running in the top 10, followed by a 1st stage spin at New Hampshire while fighting for a top 5 spot. Prior to the Go Bowling 235 at the Daytona Road Course, the number 48 team changed the Ally paint scheme from black to white, which Johnson branded as a rally livery in an effort to reset his luck. Johnson, who had experience at the road course via the 24 Hours of Daytona, finished 4th in a run that he described as what we needed.
The final 3 races of the regular season saw Johnson battling with Byron and Matt DiBenedetto for the final playoff spots. Entering the doubleheader at Johnson's strongest track, Dover, Johnson was 25 points behind his teammate. He finished 7th and 3rd in the 2 races, while Byron was 28th and 4th, which placed Johnson below Byron by 4 points with 1 race before the playoffs and 9 points behind DiBenedetto. The final race, the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona, began with a strong first stage for Johnson as he finished 5th, ahead of Byron and DiBenedetto. The second stage saw him pit early to avoid having to save fuel, and he took advantage of the drivers pitting later in the stage for another 5th-place finish. Although the 3 bubble drivers avoided a late wreck in the final stage, Johnson was collected in the big one with 2 laps remaining. Although his team was able to salvage the car to meet the minimum speed and finish 17th, DiBenedetto beat him for the last playoff seed by 6 points. In his post-race interview, Johnson lamented his misfortunes during the year, including the Coca-Cola 600 disqualification and the positive COVID-19 test. He drew praise from fans for his humility when he congratulated Knaus, who moved to Byron's team, and expressed his gratitude to Hendrick Motorsports for his career. In the first playoff race, the Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington, despite being out of the playoffs, Johnson ran in the top 5 for most of the night in a throwback scheme that combined those of Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty to honor the 2 other 7-time champions. His teammates at Hendrick Motorsports also drove in throwback schemes to honor him in his last year. During the Fall Texas race, Johnson would gain publicity by running a special scheme created by designer Noah Sweet, otherwise known as Lefty or Lefty Designs. Sweet, 4 months earlier in June, had created a mock Jimmie Johnson scheme adorned with pride flag colors, which had led to an excess of harassment towards Sweet and led him to take a temporary break from social media. During his break, encouragement came from most in the NASCAR community, with the hashtag #WeLoveLefty created and spread, including Johnson himself. In a few weeks, Ally President Andreas Brimmer and Jimmie Johnson would tell Sweet on a video call that he would have his chance to get his design on Johnson's car. Sweet, whose favorite driver throughout his life had been Johnson, said, "I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life, I am.
The car eventually ran in the 2020 Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 500, finishing 36th due to engine issues. Johnson's only top 10 of the playoffs came in his final start with a 5th-place finish in the season finale 500 at Phoenix. He was the highest finishing driver of those not in the championship round. After the race, he congratulated teammate Elliott on his maiden championship and performed a Polish victory lap.
He ended his final season with 10 top 10 finishes, the lowest of his career. IndyCar Series. Johnson racing at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2021. In 2020, Johnson participated in a test with IndyCar Series team Chip Ganassi Racing. He initially had a test scheduled in March with Arrow McLaren SP at Barber Motorsports Park before it was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A second attempt with Chip Ganassi Racing on the Indianapolis road course in July was postponed when he tested positive for the virus. The CTR test finally took place on July 28, 2020. It was overseen by CGR owner Chip Ganassi and 5-time IndyCar champion Scott Dixon, who is, along with Johnson, considered to be one of the best in their respective series, to discuss the car. Johnson said that driving an IndyCar was a childhood dream of his. On September 9, 2020, Johnson announced that he would join Chip Ganassi Racing on a part-time basis in 2021 and 2022 to drive the road and street courses on the IndyCar circuit. The deal left open the possibility of running select NASCAR Cup Series events in conjunction, as Ganassi fielded 2 cars in NASCAR and could have added a part-time car for Johnson, staying under the 4-car maximum for Cup teams. However, in 2021, Ganassi's NASCAR operations were sold to Justin Marks and absorbed into the Trackhouse Racing team the following year. Johnson refused to run the ovals due to safety concerns of racing open-wheel cars on them, but after both driving the cars and watching teammate Tony Kanaan run on ovals, he ultimately agreed to run an oval test at Texas to prep himself for the Indianapolis 500. Throughout the year, Johnson largely struggled in IndyCar, frequently running at the back of the field and struggling with spins and accidents. Johnson during the 2022 Sancio Grand Prix at Road America. On December 15, 2021, Johnson announced that he would contest the full 2022 IndyCar schedule, driving the number 48 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. During his first oval race in the series, the XPEL 375 at Texas, Johnson finished a then-career best 6th. Johnson made his Indianapolis 500 debut later in the year. Johnson led 2 laps and, despite a late race crash, was elected Rookie of the Year for the race. Johnson proceeded to collect his first career IndyCar top 5 in his first ever trip to Iowa Speedway at the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 presented by Google on July 24, 2022. On September 26, 2022, Johnson announced that he would be stepping back from racing full-time. 2023 to present, Legacy Motor Club co-owner, part-time return to NASCAR. Johnson in the number 84 at Daytona International Speedway in 2023. On November 4, 2022, Johnson purchased an ownership stake in Petty GMS Motorsports. In addition, he announced his return to the Cup Series on a part-time basis in 2023, starting with an attempt to make the 2023 Daytona 500. On January 11, 2023, the team was rebranded under the name Legacy Motor Club, with Johnson announced to be running the number 84. On February 14, 2023, Johnson made the Daytona 500 entry field by scoring the fastest lap among the non-chartered teams. Johnson finished 31st after being involved in an overtime crash. Johnson would then make a start at the COTA race in March, where he finished 38th after wrecking out on lap 1. Johnson's next start would come at the 2023 Coca-Cola 600 in May. He finished 37th after spinning out twice and only completing 115 laps. On June 26, 2023, Johnson's in-laws were involved in a possible murder-suicide at their house in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Johnson was on the original entry list for the Chicago Street Course race, yet on June 27, 2023, Legacy Motor Club announced they would withdraw his entry from the race due to the tragedy. Johnson's number 84 car at Dover Motor Speedway in 2024. Johnson's number 84 car at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in 2024. Johnson started his 2024 part-time season with a 28th place finish at the 2024 Daytona 500. He also raced at Texas, 29th, Dover, 28th, Kansas, 38th, Charlotte, 29th, and Indianapolis, 33rd. On July 26th, Legacy Motor Club released crew chief Jason Burdett and several members of the number 84 team. On January 27, 2025, Johnson was named majority owner of Legacy Motor Club, with Knighthead Capital Management purchasing a minority stake and former co-owner Maury Gallagher stepping back into an ambassador role. At the 2025 Daytona 500, Johnson finished 3rd, his highest finish at the race since winning in 2013, his highest finish in the next-gen cars. His previous best was 26th at the 2024 season finale at Phoenix, and his highest finish since the 2020 Dryden 311 doubleheader at Dover. For the 2026 season, Johnson made the starting grid of the 2026 Daytona 500 after applying for the open exemption provisional. He is also scheduled to run the Coronado Street Race. Other racing. Johnson driving a Fiat Grande Punto S2000 Abarth at the 2007 Race of Champions at Wembley Stadium. Johnson first raced in the Race of Champions in Europe in 2002. He was eliminated in the first runoff by then World Rally champion Marcus Gronholm of Finland, but he and Jeff Gordon and Colin Edwards, racing as Team USA, won the team's championship. He returned to the event 2 years later, but lost the quarterfinal 0-2 to Matthias Ekström of Sweden, who was DTM German touring car champion that year.
Johnson entered the 2006 Race of Champions but did not start due to an injury received just days before the race. He still attended the event to cheer for teammate Travis Pastrana. In the 2007 event, Johnson was eliminated before the quarterfinals by Formula One driver Sébastien Bourdais of France.
In 2004, Johnson started racing in Grand Am with the 24 Hours of Daytona, where he finished 8th. He also entered the event 1 year later, which his team, Howard Boss Motorsports, finished 2nd. 2 years later, he entered 2 events, which were both held at Daytona International Speedway. During the races, his team finished 9th and 19th. In 2008, Johnson moved to Bob Stallings Racing with Alex Gurney and John Fogerty to race in the 2008 Rolex 24 at Daytona, where the team finished 2nd. 1 year later, he returned with Gainsco/Bob Stallings Racing for his 5th Rolex 24 appearance. During the race, his team finished 7th. He returned to the team in 2010 to race in the Rolex 24 and Salen's 6 Hours of the Glen. During the Rolex 24 at Daytona, his team finished 21st, while at Watkins Glen, the team finished 6th. He returned to the Rolex 24 in 2011, where his team finished 15th. A white and pink Cadillac prototype, sponsored by Alley Bank with the number 48, displayed in the 5th position, races near sunset at Road Atlanta. The 48 Action Express Racing Cadillac, for which Johnson was the flagship driver, running in the 2021 Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. Johnson returned to the race in 2021, driving an Ally Financial-sponsored number 48 Cadillac DPI vs. R for Action Express Racing, alongside Simon Pagenaud, Kamui Kobayashi, and Mike Rockenfeller. He finished 2nd for a 3rd time in his career. Alongside Pagenaud and Kobayashi, he will participate in all IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup races for 2021, which include Sebring, Watkins Glen, and Road Atlanta. At Sebring, his team finished 3rd, but they were moved to the rear of DPI classification for violating drive time rules after Pagenaud was found to have driven more than the maximum 4 hours within a 6-hour time period. The team finished 28th in overall ranking. On November 26, 2018, Johnson participated in a motorsports cultural exchange with 2-time F1 champion Fernando Alonso at Bahrain International Circuit, where both drivers compared their respective race cars. Personal life. Johnson, center with his wife Chandra and President Barack Obama in 2011. Johnson was born on September 17, 1975 in El Cajon, California, the son of Catherine Ellen Cathy, née Dunhill, and Gary Ernest Johnson. He has 2 younger brothers, Jarrett and Jesse. Both have made professional off-road racing starts in the Torque, the Off-Road Championship. Johnson attended Granite Hills High School, while he raced motorcycles during the weekends. He was a varsity water polo player, diver, and swimmer, and graduated in 1993. The number 48 is retired from all sports teams' uniforms at his school, and Johnson was inducted into the school's Athletic Hall of Fame. Johnson lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, like many other NASCAR drivers. He is married to Chandra Janway. They have 2 daughters.
Johnson is a triathlete, regularly participating in triathlons and long-distance running. The Jimmie Johnson Foundation's Wellness Challenge also hosts triathlons. In 2019, he competed in the Boston Marathon, finishing with a time of 3:09:07 and 4,155th overall, 3,746th among males, and 641st in the male 40-44 class. Johnson was close friends with NASCAR competitor Blaise Alexander. Following Alexander's death during a racing incident at Charlotte in 2001, which prompted NASCAR as a sanctioning body to require the use of the HANDS device by every driver in its top 3 series, Johnson's car has had a flame decal with Alexander's initials inside of it at every race. In 2004, following the plane crash that killed the son of Rick Hendrick, Ricky, along with 9 others, the tail number of the Hendrick plane that crashed was added alongside Alexander's initials. The Jimmie Johnson Foundation. The Jimmie Johnson Foundation was launched by Johnson and his wife Chandra in 2006. The foundation helps children, families, and communities in need. In 2007, Johnson opened Jimmie Johnson's Victory Lanes in Randleman, North Carolina, which is a 4-lane bowling alley for campers at Patty and Kyle Petty's Victory Junction Gang Camp. The foundation supports several charities, including Habitat for Humanity, Hendrick Marrow Program, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and Victory Junction. Every year it holds a golf tournament in San Diego, which raises money for K-12 public education. Since the beginning, the tournament has raised a total of $8 million to help fund several projects. During 2009 and 2010, the foundation awarded $1.5 million for the Education Champions Grants program. The money is given to public schools in California, Oklahoma, and North Carolina.
It helps fund basic needs such as technology, outdoor classrooms, playground construction, and reading programs. The foundation has also assisted the American Red Cross with disaster relief efforts. In 2014, Johnson joined the Ban Bossy campaign as a spokesperson advocating leadership in young girls. Legacy. For his successes, Johnson is often regarded as one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. Other drivers and teammates have also lauded Johnson for his leadership and helpfulness, including younger drivers Corey LaJoie, for whom Johnson advocated to get a seat in a Cup car, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Bubba Wallace, Alex Bowman, and Ryan Blaney, as well as veterans including Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, Jeff Gordon, and more. Awards and honors. In 2000, people recognized Johnson as one of their men in the fast lane. Johnson has won the Driver of the Year award 5 times, 2006, 2007, 2009, 2010, 2013. In 2009, he became the first racing driver to win the Associated Press Male Athlete of the Year award in the United States. Johnson was ranked number 1 on Forbes.com's list of most influential athletes for 2 consecutive years, 2011-2012.
In 2018, Johnson received the 4th annual Burnsy Award, named after the late Fox NASCAR broadcaster Steve Burns, during FS1's race day prior to the running of the Toyota Save Mart 350 at Sonoma Raceway. Records and milestones. At the time of his retirement, Johnson's 83 career points-paying victories made him the winningest active NASCAR driver, in 6th place among the all-time Cup Series winners. He is also ranked 3rd among those who have competed during the sport's modern era, 1972-present. He is tied in first with Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Richard Petty for most NASCAR Cup Series championships with 7. He also has the most consecutive NASCAR Cup Series championships with 5. Johnson is the all-time winningest Cup Series driver at the following tracks: Auto Club Speedway, 6, Charlotte Motor Speedway, 8, Dover International Speedway, 11, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, 4, Texas Motor Speedway, 7.
Johnson won a Cup Series race at every track on the 2020 schedule except at Chicagoland Speedway, where he won his first NASCAR race in the Busch Series, Kentucky Speedway, Watkins Glen International, the Roval at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and the Daytona International Speedway Road Course. Up until 2019, Johnson was the only driver to have qualified for the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs every single year since its inception in 2004. He also holds the record for the most consecutive and total playoff appearances, with 15. Soccer. On January 11, 2022, Johnson announced Charlotte FC's first ever MLS draft pick and the first overall draft pick of the 2022 MLS Super Draft when Charlotte drafted Ben Bender out of the University of Maryland, College Park. In popular culture, film and television appearances. Johnson appeared as a moonshine runner along with Ryan Newman in the opening scene of the 2004 NASCAR 3D, the IMAX experience. Johnson made an appearance as himself in the 2005 film Herbie Fully Loaded, commenting on Herbie's sunroof as unusual for a stock car to have, and his car is also briefly seen from Herbie's POV. Johnson starred in an episode of the television series Las Vegas in 2005. Johnson starred in an episode of the HBO reality television series 24/7 titled Jimmie Johnson Race to Daytona. Cameras followed him from January 2010 to the 52nd Daytona 500 held on February 14, 2010. In 2012, Johnson was featured in a NASCAR segment of Top Gear along with NASCAR drivers Jeff Gordon, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Kyle Petty. Johnson appeared on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon 3 times between 2014, 2016, and 2022. In the 7th episode of 2014, Johnson and Fallon raced motorized beer coolers. In the 48th episode of 2016, Johnson joined Fallon and fellow Champion 4 NASCAR drivers Carl Edwards, Joey Logano, and Kyle Busch in a game of Mario Kart. In the 144th episode of 2022, Johnson and his daughter joined Fallon to promote the running of the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. Johnson appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show during its 10th season in 2013. Fresh off his second Daytona 500 victory, Johnson challenged host Ellen DeGeneres to a go-kart race. On November 19, 2013, Johnson became the first professional athlete to co-host ESPN's flagship news show, SportsCenter. In 2015, Johnson appeared on the series Repeat After Me and voiced a lobster named Jimmy on the animated kid show Bubble Guppies. In 2016, Johnson appeared in Blaze and the Monster Machines with fellow NASCAR drivers Chase Elliott, Casey Kane, and Danica Patrick. In 2016, Johnson appeared in a cutaway gag for Season 2, Episode 7 of Superstore. On November 30, 2021, Johnson appeared on CBS Mornings to promote the Jimmie Johnson Foundation's charity campaign with the American Legion.
In 2022, Johnson appeared alongside fellow NASCAR driver Clint Bowyer in Season 1, Episode 3 of Barmageddon. The episode saw the two face off under the show's format, magazines. Johnson has appeared on the cover of several magazines, including NASCAR Illustrated, Sports Illustrated, Men's Fitness, and Success. Music video. Johnson makes a cameo appearance as a pilot in the music video for the Avett Brothers' Ain't No Man, the lead single from the album True Sadness 2016. Video games. Johnson's Cup Ride, the number 48 Lowe's Chevrolet, is featured on the covers of NASCAR Racing 2003 season alongside Kevin Harvick and NASCAR The Game 2011.
Johnson and Hendrick Motorsports teammate Jeff Gordon are featured on the cover of NASCAR A6 Total Team Control, highlighting Team Control, the main edition of the game. Johnson is also one of the 6 cover drivers of NASCAR kart racing. Johnson's number 48 Chevrolet Impala is one of the 12 playable NASCAR Sprint Cup Series stock cars in the 2010 racing video game Gran Turismo 5. His 2011 car was later added to the game in the Spec 2 update of the game, with his 2013 car also being featured in the 2013 sequel Gran Turismo 6. Johnson is featured in the 2011 racing video game Jimmie Johnson's Anything with an Engine. Johnson's number 48 is also playable in Forza Motorsport 6 via the NASCAR expansion pack. The expansion features 24 paint schemes from the 2016 Sprint Cup Series season, including Johnson's number 48 Lowe's SS. Johnson, along with Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, provide commentary in the expansion as the voices of motorsport. Johnson and Elliott also had roles in developing the expansion. Johnson, along with teammates Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, and William Byron, were featured on the cover of NASCAR Heat 3. Johnson was also featured in Alley Racer, a mobile game created to honor his final season by Alley Financial.